The wind howled like a wounded animal, biting through Emma's threadbare cloak as she stumbled along the snow-covered path with her newborn clutched tightly to her chest. Her boots, soaked and torn, sank with every step into the frozen earth, and her vision blurred as the blizzard turned the world into a spinning curtain of white. Blood still stained her skirts. She had given birth less than a day ago in the back of a wagon, abandoned by the man who'd promised to marry her and keep her safe. His name had been Samuel, and he'd vanished as soon as the child came, muttering something about shame and ruined plans. Now she was alone in the Montana wilderness, miles from the last cabin she had seen, with nothing but a blanket-wrapped infant and fading hope. Her fingers were blue, and her lips cracked from the cold, but she couldn't stop. Not while the baby still breathed. The infant let out a soft, pitiful cry, more a shiver than a wail, and Emma tightened her grip, tears freezing on her cheeks. She whispered, "Shh, Mama's got you," though she no longer believed it. The wind slammed into her, and her knees buckled. She hit the snow with a muffled thud, barely managing to shield the baby as she collapsed. For a moment she thought of letting go, just lying there and letting the storm take them both. No one would know. No one would care. But then, just as the last of her strength began to fade, the sound of hooves cut through the howl. A horse snorted, heavy boots landed in the snow, and the shadow of a man loomed above her, broad, tall, wrapped in a long duster coat, his face hidden beneath a snow-dusted hat. "Ma'am," he said, voice gruff but startled. "You alive?" Emma couldn't respond. She just held out the baby, her arms trembling. The man knelt quickly, eyes scanning her and the child. He pulled off his coat in one swift motion, wrapping it around them both like a shelter, his strong hands surprisingly gentle. "God Almighty," he muttered, lifting them as if they weighed nothing. "You're gonna freeze to death out here." Emma tried to speak, but all that came was a rasp. As he carried her toward his horse, something in his voice softened. "Don't worry, I've got you now." And for the first time in days, Emma let herself believe she might live to see morning. The warmth hit her like a wave, sharp, almost painful against frozen skin, as the door of the cabin swung open and the stranger carried her across the threshold. Emma's vision flickered in and out, a blur of firelight, wood, and the scent of pine and smoke. The man kicked the door shut behind them, moving fast but careful, as if holding something fragile that might break if jostled. He laid her down on a worn cot near the hearth, the fire already blazing high with fresh logs crackling. The coat, still wrapped around her, and the baby smelled of leather, horse, and something faintly sweet like pipe tobacco. Her teeth chattered violently, and the baby whimpered, his tiny mouth searching for warmth. The man knelt beside them, his hands hovering over her like he wasn't sure what to touch. "Can you hear me?" he asked, voice lower now, calm. "I'm gonna get you both warm. Just hang on." Emma's lips moved, but no sound came. She didn't even know his name. Her arms instinctively tightened around the baby, and he nodded in understanding. "You're safe now," he said. "I promise." He moved with quiet urgency, fetching blankets, stoking the fire, pouring hot water into a tin cup. He pressed the rim gently to her lips. "Drink." Slowly. The warmth burned down her throat, and tears leaked from her eyes. Not from pain, but from the shock of not being alone anymore. The baby stirred, his cries growing more insistent. The man reached into a cabinet and retrieved a folded cloth and a small bottle. "It's goat's milk. My mare just foaled a week ago. It ain't much, but it'll help him." Emma watched, dazed, as he fed her child with the gentleness of a man who had seen suffering and knew how to answer it. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She forced the word past cracked lips. "Emma." He nodded. "I'm Cole." He didn't offer a last name, and she didn't ask. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken things. After a while, he sat in the nearby rocking chair, elbows on knees, watching the fire. "You were out there too long," he said. "If I hadn't gone looking for the foal, I never would have found you." Emma looked down at the baby, now asleep in her arms, a little bundle of life she nearly lost. "Thank you," she whispered. Cole nodded, but his eyes stayed on the flames. "Don't thank me yet," he murmured. "The storm's just started, and something tells me it's not just out there." Emma's heart thudded. She wasn't just running from cold, she was running from a man. And something in Cole's voice said he'd seen that kind of trouble before. The storm roared outside, snow pelting the cabin like fists against a coffin lid. But inside, the silence between Emma and Cole grew heavier with each passing hour. She had changed into a dry flannel shift he found in a trunk and sat close to the fire with her baby cradled against her chest, both wrapped in his coat. Cole moved about the cabin with quiet purpose, chopping kindling, boiling broth, mending a broken hinge on the door. But his eyes returned to her often, as if waiting for her to speak. She didn't know what to tell him, not yet. Not everything. But the truth, like the storm, was creeping closer, unavoidable. "He left me," she said finally, her voice barely above the wind. Cole paused, a small pot in his hands, and looked over. "The baby's father?" She nodded. "He promised a wedding. Took me from Nebraska to Montana. Said he'd bought a cabin. There was no cabin. Just a campfire and a lie." Cole's jaw tightened. He set the pot on the stove and sat across from her. "What happened?" Emma blinked against the sting in her eyes. "When the baby came early, he panicked. Said no one would take us in. Said I was ruined. He left in the night. Took the mule, the food, even my boots." Her voice cracked. "He didn't even look back." The words hung in the air, sharp and raw. Cole didn't offer pity. He didn't offer hollow comfort. Just a quiet nod, as if her pain wasn't something to fix, but something to witness. "That's not your shame to carry," he said at last. "A man walks away from his blood like that. He's the one who ought to freeze." Emma clutched her baby tighter. "He said if I followed, he'd make sure no one ever found me." Cole's eyes darkened, his gaze shifting to the window where the wind howled. "Does he know where you'd go?" "No," she whispered. "I didn't even know. I just walked." Cole stood and walked to the fireplace, poking the embers with a measured hand. "If he comes looking," he said slowly, "he'll find me first." Emma stared at his back. Broad, solid, unmoving. He didn't owe her anything. He didn't even know her, and yet here he was, placing himself between her and the past like a man setting his boots at the edge of a cliff. The fire cracked. The wind wailed. And in that moment, Emma realized something frightening and beautiful. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was being defended. The next morning, the storm had quieted to a whisper, but the sky remained bruised and low. Cole stepped outside with his rifle slung across his back, eyes sweeping the white hills for tracks that didn't belong. Emma watched him from the window, the baby sleeping on her chest, their breath fogging the glass in slow rhythm. The cabin felt like a fragile bubble between two worlds, the one she'd barely escaped and the one she didn't yet trust. When Cole returned, his boots thudded softly against the floorboards, snow trailing in behind him. He shook the cold from his coat and placed his rifle beside the door. "No tracks," he said, voice flat. "No trouble yet." Yet. That word hung between them like a ticking clock. He handed her a tin mug of warm broth. "You should eat." Emma sipped slowly, the salt and heat blooming across her tongue. "You live out here alone?" He nodded. "Bought the land last year. Needed quiet. I found more than I bargained for." Emma's brow furrowed. "Like what?" Cole leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Turns out silence talks back when it's the only thing around." He offered a dry smile, then grew serious. "But I wasn't expecting you." Emma lowered her eyes. "I wasn't expecting to be here." "Where would you have gone?" he asked. "If I hadn't found you." "Nowhere," she said. "Or maybe the river. I stopped choosing after he left me in the snow." Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, he said, "That's where I was, 2 winters ago. Different reason. Same kind of dark." Emma looked up, startled. His eyes weren't filled with pity. They were mirrors. "What stopped you?" she asked. "My brother's boy," he said. 10 years old. Showed up one morning after his pa drank himself to death. Didn't know where else to go. Needed someone." "Is he still with you?" Cole shook his head. "Got taken in by an uncle down in Idaho, but he made it, and I guess I did too." The fire cracked between them, casting light and shadow on the wooden walls. Emma glanced toward the window again, and froze. "Cole," she whispered, voice thin. "There's someone on the ridge." He moved fast, snatching the rifle and stepping to the door. "How many?" "Just one. Horse and rider." Cole stared through the glass, muscles tensing. "Could be a trap. Could be your past." Emma's breath caught as the rider paused at the ridge, silhouetted against the gray sky. Cole turned to her, calm but resolute. "If it's him, he'll wish he'd stayed lost." And for the first time, Emma didn't feel like prey. She felt protected by something dangerous and good. The rider didn't come closer that day. He lingered on the ridge, still as a statue, his horse pawing the snow while the man sat hunched in the saddle, shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat bent at the crown. Emma watched him from the cabin window, her breath shallow, heart thudding like a drum in her chest. Cole never moved far from the door, his rifle always within reach, eyes narrowed like a wolf scenting blood. "Is it him?" he asked quietly. Emma didn't answer right away. She stared, trying to catch a glimpse of a face she'd spent weeks trying to forget. I can't tell," she whispered. "He wore a black hat, just like that, but—" Her voice trailed off. The snow blurred everything. Cole nodded once. "Then we don't wait to find out." He lit lanterns around the cabin that night, not for light, but for warning, symbols that said someone lives here, someone watches. He moved with the calm of a man who'd drawn his share of lines in the dirt and dared others to cross them. Emma fed the baby near the fire, her hands shaking as she buttoned his tiny shirt with cold fingers. "He wouldn't come in the open," she murmured. "Not unless he was sure I was alone." Cole looked over from the table where he was cleaning his rifle. "He won't find you alone again. Ever." She swallowed hard. "You don't know him, Cole. He plays nice when others are watching, but when it's just you and him, he turns." Cole set the rifle down. "I've met that kind of man. He'll say I lied, that I stole his money, that I ran with his child." "Did you?" "No," she said, her voice like cut glass. "I only ran when he tried to sell me to pay his debt." Cole stood slowly, the firelight casting hard lines across his face. "Then I reckon he's the one who should be hiding." That night, sleep came in fits. Emma lay with the baby curled against her chest, the sound of the wind muffled by the thick log walls. Somewhere in the dark, Cole moved like a shadow, checking windows, feeding the fire, never letting the quiet settle too long. And just before dawn, When the baby stirred and Emma rose to rock him, she looked out the window again. The ridge was empty. The man was gone. But in the snow below, near the tree line, were fresh boot prints and something glinting in the moonlight. Cole retrieved it just after sunrise. A black hat, torn at the crown, left like a message, or a challenge. He held it in his hands for a long while, then looked at Emma. "He's not gone," he said quietly. "He's just close enough to think we're afraid." But Cole wasn't, and Emma didn't want to be either. The sun rose like a blade behind the trees, slicing through the fog that clung to the forest. The black hat sat on the porch rail, a warning turned inside out. Emma stood in the doorway, the baby nestled in her shawl, watching Cole hammer a line of stakes into the frozen earth. On each one he hung strips of cloth, red torn from an old shirt, and tied them tight enough that the wind wouldn't take them. "What are they?" she asked. "A line," he said without looking up. "He crosses that, and we don't talk." Emma's arms tightened around the child. "You think he'll come back today?" Cole straightened, his breath visible in the cold morning air. "I think he never left." They worked together in silence after that. She boiled water while he chopped more wood. She fed the baby, and he repaired the back latch on the cabin window. Every task felt like part of a defense. Every movement said we're staying. After lunch, Cole brought out a second rifle, shorter, older, but still sharp. He set it on the table in front of Emma. "Can you shoot?" She hesitated, fingers trembling as she touched the worn stock. "My father taught me before he passed. I haven't since." "It'll come back," Cole said. "He won't expect it. That's how you win." She looked up at him, fear and something fiercer twisting in her chest. "You're not sending me away?" "I don't send people away, Emma. Not the ones who've already been thrown out of the world." That night, she slept beside the cradle, while Cole sat with the rifle by the door. The firelight danced across the wooden walls, and outside, the wind had stilled, as if the forest itself was waiting. At midnight, the baby woke crying. Emma hushed him, feeding him quietly. Just as she laid him down again, she saw Cole stiffen. A shadow moved outside, a figure, slow, confident, approaching the line of red flags. Cole raised the rifle, eyes narrowed. Emma reached for the second rifle without thinking. Her heartbeat pounded like war drums. The figure stopped. A voice called out through the trees, familiar, slick, venom hidden in velvet. "Emma, you in there, sweetheart?" Her breath froze. It was him, Samuel, the devil with a wedding promise and a soul made of rust. Cole stood slowly, rifle steady. "She is, but she's not alone." Silence, then laughter, low and cruel. "So you finally found someone else to clean up your messes, huh?" Emma stepped forward, rifle in hand, voice like ice. "Number, I found someone who doesn't make me one." The figure paused at the edge of the red flags, then retreated, boots crunching snow. He hadn't crossed the line. Yet. But Emma knew now. Next time, he would. And next time, she'd be ready. The next day broke too quiet. No wind, no bird song. Just the low groan of trees heavy with frost and the tension that pulled at Emma's spine like a string about to snap. Cole had been up since before dawn, scouting the tree line, his jaw set, his eyes sharper than she'd ever seen. Emma moved through the cabin with purpose, but her thoughts trailed back to Samuel's voice, how he had stood just at the edge of the red flags, daring them to flinch. She kept the rifle close now, propped beside the cradle where her son slept soundly, unaware that the world outside had turned into a hunt. Cole returned mid-morning, snow clinging to his boots, his face pale with quiet fury. "There's smoke in the timber line," he said. "A mile out, controlled, intentional. Emma's stomach dropped. He's setting camp? Or setting traps? Cole moved to the table, spreading out a rough map of the land. He's not just watching anymore. He's waiting. For me to leave. For you to run. I won't run, Emma said softly. Cole looked up, and there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Not just concern, not just protection. Something closer to respect. He won't wait long, Cole said. He's the kind who thinks force is quicker than fear. He's right, she replied, voice steady. Fear was yesterday. Today, I'll fight. Cole nodded. Then we set the ground. For the next few hours, they worked like they were building a fortress. Emma helped stack logs near the windows to reinforce them. Cole poured oil into lanterns and positioned them along the porch. The baby stirred but didn't cry, almost as if he understood the quiet demand of survival. Just before dusk, Cole handed Emma a small satchel. What's this? She asked. Matches, a knife, and a flare. She looked up sharply. You think I'll need to run after all? No, he said. I think he'll try to light the cabin on fire. The words sank like stones in her gut. Cole continued, voice even. If he does, I want you to take the baby and move north. There's an old trapper's cabin a mile through the pines. Shelter, wood, water. Emma gripped the satchel. What about you? I'll stop him before it comes to that. And as the sun dipped below the ridgeline, casting long shadows through the forest, a flicker of orange appeared in the distance. Smoke again, but this time closer, thicker. He's pushing, Cole said, watching the sky turn to fire. Tonight, he crosses the line. Emma didn't blink. Then let him come. Because this wasn't the same girl who had stumbled through the snow. This was a woman standing on her own land, rifle in hand, with everything worth fighting for in her arms. And this time, she wouldn't be the one left behind. The sky turned red long before the flames reached the cabin. Emma stood at the window, her breath fogging the glass, watching the tree line glow like a fuse slowly crawling toward a powder keg. Cole moved like a man who'd been here before, his steps calm, deliberate, his rifle loaded, lanterns lit, water pails filled to the brim and lined along the porch. He's trying to smoke us out, he said, wiping soot from his hands. He thinks we'll panic. Emma tightened her grip on the rifle. He's wrong. The baby slept in a basket near the hearth, bundled in layers of wool and quiet innocence. Emma had already memorized the fastest path to the trapper's cabin Cole mentioned, but something deeper in her gut whispered, We're not running this time. Outside, the snow hissed and steamed as flames from the underbrush licked the edge of the forest. The wind shifted, carrying the heat straight toward them. Then came the first sound of boots, crunching, slow and cruel, approaching the porch with purpose. Samuel stepped into view, his coat open, his shotgun slung casually over one shoulder, like a man coming home from a long day's work. But his eyes were gleaming with madness. Emma, he called out, you've made this harder than it had to be. Cole stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. Drop the gun, turn around. Samuel smirked. Who are you supposed to be? Her savior? Her prize? I'm the man she and that baby live with now. That's all that matters. Samuel's jaw twitched. She's mine. Not anymore, Cole said. Not ever. Samuel raised his shotgun, but before he could aim, a shot rang out. Not from him, not from Cole, but from behind the cabin. Samuel staggered. Blood bloomed across his sleeve. He turned in shock as Emma stepped from behind the porch, rifle steady in her hands. You always underestimated me, she said, voice cold as the wind. You thought I'd break. You thought I'd crawl back. Samuel dropped his gun, staggered forward, then lunged. Cole moved like lightning, tackling him into the snow, fists flying, one man fueled by rage, the other by something far more dangerous: purpose. The fire crackled behind them, but it was the fight that set the air on fire. Emma watched, rifle still ready, until Samuel finally stopped moving. Bloody, broken, and unconscious. Cole rose slowly, breathing hard, lips split but alive. He looked at Emma through the smoke and falling ash. "You didn't miss," she exhaled shakily. "I wasn't aiming to." And together they stood in the snow as the flames died behind them. Not just fire, but fear. Not just smoke, but silence. And when Emma looked down at her son, still sleeping peacefully, she knew. This land was hers now, because she had stayed. And she had won. The sheriff came at dawn, his horse crunching over the frozen ash that still smoked in places around the tree line. He didn't ask many questions, just looked at Samuel, tied and bloodied on the porch, and at Cole and Emma standing side by side with rifles still leaning against the wall. "Hey, yours?" the sheriff asked Emma, one brow raised. She shook her head. "He was. Not anymore." The sheriff sighed, scratched his chin, and looked out over the smoldering stretch of land. "I heard tell of a woman abandoned in the snow. Didn't think she'd live. Didn't think she'd fight either." Cole handed the sheriff a folded note, written in Samuel's own handwriting found in his saddlebag. A promissory deal to trade Emma for land he'd lost in a card game. The sheriff's eyes darkened. "I'll take him to Helena. He won't bother you again." As the wagon rolled away, Emma stood in the doorway, her baby in her arms, the wind stirring the curls from his forehead. Cole stepped beside her, his face bruised but calmer than she'd ever seen. "You all right?" he asked. "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." Word spread quickly. The blacksmith's wife came to check on her the next morning. Then the pastor's daughter dropped off a loaf of bread without a word. None of them asked for details. Maybe they knew better. Or maybe they were finally learning that quiet women had the loudest stories once someone listened. Emma didn't speak much in those first few days after. She swept ash off the porch, boiled water for baby clothes, and helped Cole fix the section of fencing that had burned. It wasn't conversation. It was rebuilding. One nail, one stitch, one silent shared glance at a time. On the 5th morning, she found a small box by the hearth. Inside was a silver ring, simple, plain, but warm to the touch. A note rested beneath it. "You don't owe me anything, but I'd be proud to owe you everything. Cole." Her breath caught. She stared at the ring, then at the window where he was chopping wood in the pale light, sleeves rolled high, the morning steam rising off his skin. He hadn't asked for permission. He'd offered a place, a name, a future, without demand. That night, Emma cooked the first real meal since the baby came. Cole walked in, boots caked in mud, eyes tired. She set the food down, took his hand, and placed the ring in his palm. "Ask me properly," she whispered. He looked at her, truly looked, then dropped to one knee on the creaky cabin floor. And when he asked, her answer wasn't just yes. It was everything the storm hadn't taken. Spring crept in slowly, peeling the snow back from the edges of the world like a careful seamstress. The grass grew brave again. The trees, still bearing scars of fire, began to bud. And inside the cabin, where once there had only been silence and survival, laughter now lived. Emma stood at the stove in a blue calico dress she hadn't worn since Nebraska. Her baby cooed in a cradle nearby, fat and healthy and adored. Cole sat by the window, carving a toy horse from cedar, his sleeves rolled up, his hands steady, calm. Outside, the ranch had come alive. Neighbors who once watched in silence now rode by with baskets, extra seed, even offers of fencing help. The woman they'd whispered about had stayed, had fought, had become something unshakable. And the man they thought would always live alone had started to smile. The wedding had been small. Just them, the baby, and the preacher who didn't ask too many questions. Emma hadn't wanted a crowd. She didn't need white lace or piano hymns. She just needed the feel of Cole's hand in hers and the sound of her baby asleep nearby. That was enough. More than enough. As the days passed, she began to breathe differently. No longer with fear in her lungs, but with purpose. She planted herbs by the kitchen window. She hung laundry that smelled of sun. She stitched curtains from old linens and laughed the first time Cole tried to rock the baby to sleep and ended up snoring louder than the child. But beneath all of it, beneath the daily rhythm of mending, feeding, growing, was a deeper beat. A knowing. She had been left to die in the snow, unseen and discarded. And yet now, here she was, thriving. Not because someone saved her, but because someone believed in her strength and then stepped aside to let her walk forward with it. Cole never told her where to go, what to do, how to mother, how to heal. He just walked beside her. He brought her boots when hers wore thin. He stayed up with the baby when her hands shook too much. He left firewood by the door every morning, no matter the weather. Not once did he ask her to be anything but exactly who she was. And that, more than the ring, more than the home, was love. A love that didn't try to fix. A love that didn't make demands. A love that said, I see you, and that's enough. On a bright morning, as the baby took his first steps between them, wobbling from Cole's arms into Emma's, she laughed and caught him. And in that simple, perfect moment, Emma knew. She had found a man who wrapped her in his coat when the world turned cold and never asked for thanks. Just a place in the warmth she made.